안 힘들어 지금.
The world sees K-pop idols as stars living inside some glossy alternate universe, filled with bright stages, perfect smiles, and endless success. But that polished fantasy hides a world most people never get a glimpse of. A world built on pressure, contracts that micromanage nearly every aspect of an idol's existence, and expectations that push young trainees far past what most adults could ever handle. This is the story of what really happens behind the glitter, where the cost of becoming a star can be far heavier than anyone imagines. For many K-pop idols, the journey begins before they've even figured out their school timetable. Trainees, some barely teenagers, get pulled into the system through auditions or televised survival shows. Once inside, they enter a routine that feels less like music training and more like a hyper-disciplined boot camp. Singing, dancing, language lessons, grooming sessions, rinse and repeat every day for years. Many trainees move straight into company dorms the moment they're accepted. Some even live away from their families, juggling schoolwork with hours of training that could put Olympic athletes to shame. But here's the twist. This isn't just training. This is a full-blown business strategy. Labels treat trainees like long-term investments, and the contracts reflect that. So-called training contracts can stretch from 7 to 10 years depending on the agency. And during that time, many trainees earn nothing because every dance lesson, every stylist, every meal, every bus ride, all of it gets added to a bill. A bill they owe. By the time a trainee is old enough to debut, it's not unusual for them to already be thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars in debt to the company. And the agency controls almost everything. Schedules, dorm assignments, the image the trainee presents, how much they earn or don't, and in some cases, even what they're allowed to eat. Former trainees have described strict diet plans, weekly weigh-ins, and barely any personal time. Decisions most teenagers make for themselves are instead handled by staff members with clipboards. This power imbalance comes with real risks. Because of company debt, many trainees feel trapped. If they want to leave early, even if they're miserable, the contract can slap them with enormous penalty fees. And since many of these deals are signed when trainees are still minors, they often don't fully understand what they're agreeing to or how long those obligations will shadow their lives. And it doesn't stop there. The control is exhaustive. Labels decide what idols look like, how they speak, how they behave, and which version of themselves the public is allowed to see. Hairstyles, outfits, Instagram captions, interviews, everything is managed, polished, airbrushed, choreographed. If an idol posts something the company doesn't approve of, it can disappear within minutes. And if an idol needs a break, the company may push ahead with schedules anyway. Because in K-pop, the image must never crack, even when the people holding it up already have. One of the most alarming parts of the K-pop idol pipeline is how it treats its youngest trainees. And nothing highlighted this more than the audition program Under 15, a survival style show built entirely around children aged 15 and under. Marketed as a heartwarming chance to discover the next generation of idols, it instead triggered an instant, furious backlash. The problem? Viewers said the styling, choreography, and facial expressions in the teasers looked almost identical to those used by adult K-pop idols, except this time, the performers were children. Seeing those concepts applied to kids made audiences deeply uncomfortable. The clips went viral for all the wrong reasons, with parents and fans asking the obvious question: why were young teens, and in some cases literal children, being pushed into adult-coded performance styles? Critics argued that the show didn't just blur lines, it bulldozed them. Many felt it encouraged what some described as packaging and selling minors long before they were ready. To them, it was another sign that the entertainment industry was inching younger and younger, branding kids the way corporations brand products. This tied into a much broader concern in South Korea: extreme competition among youth. Even elementary school children feel pressure to excel at everything: academics, sports, hobbies, and when that pressure merges with the intensity of show business, the impact becomes overwhelming. The backlash escalated so quickly that producers pulled the plug before the show even aired. The cancellation was swift and decisive because the criticism kept spreading, not just in Korea, but internationally. Parents, teachers, and youth groups all asked the same thing. How did a show like this get approved, and why did no internal review stop it earlier? But the controversy didn't end with the cancellation. Some of the finalists later filed lawsuits claiming their contracts pressured them into living together and preparing for overseas promotions, all without proper consultation with them or their guardians. This lawsuit revealed a disturbing truth. Minors can be pushed into unfamiliar, high-pressure environments simply because a company decides that's the plan. According to the filings, several parents said they were not fully informed about the living arrangements or the level of control the production company intended to have over the kids' daily lives. In other words, the under 15 scandal wasn't just a PR disaster. It was a case study in how easily vulnerable young performers can be swept into a system they barely understand. Beyond the audition shows, the everyday life of a trainee can feel overwhelming, especially for teenagers who are still figuring out who they are. And one of the most shocking recent examples comes from the case of KG Crown, also known as Kira Grace Matter, a former member of the girl group VCHA under JYP USA. In late 2024, she filed a lawsuit accusing the company of child labor exploitation, neglect, and emotional abuse, a list of allegations that instantly shook the K-pop fandom and the industry around it. Her complaint explains that she signed her contract at just 15 years old, an age when most kids are stressing about homework and curfews, not binding legal agreements. Instead of growing up with family, she was thrown into a system built on strict control and non-stop work. According to her lawsuit, she and the other members were pressured to live in a massive $2.5 million mansion in Los Angeles, which does sound pretty glamorous until you hear the details. She claims the house had hidden cameras recording their daily behavior even during meals, creating an environment where they felt constantly watched. Her routine, she says, was brutal. Extremely long practice hours, repeating the same moves endlessly, and being pushed to keep going even when they were visibly exhausted or hurt. Breaks were rare. Water and medical care were allegedly downplayed or ignored, leaving the trainees scared to speak up because they feared being punished or replaced. Money added another layer of pressure. Like many trainees, she says she carried huge company debt, from training costs to housing fees, which she was expected to repay. And despite all the work, she claims she earned almost nothing. The math didn't math. But the most disturbing part of her story involves another member. KG Crown alleges that a fellow trainee attempted suicide due to extreme pressure and neglect. She claims the company tried to cover it up by calling it food poisoning, a move that, if true, shows how far agencies might go to protect their public image rather than the children under their care. KG Crown says she finally gained the courage to speak out, hoping the lawsuit would force the industry to reevaluate how young performers are treated, especially minors who depend entirely on adults for protection. Well, JYP USA denied all her claims, calling them false or exaggerated. But the fact that a case like this even exists raises serious questions about the world these young idols grow up in, especially when they're trained across borders, tied to complex contracts they barely understand, and lacking strong legal protections designed for minors. Because beneath the lights and choreography, the truth looks very different. Many K-pop idols carry emotional stress that most people never see. The industry is engineered around perfection: spotless performances, spotless images, and spotless personalities. Trainees quickly learn that showing weakness isn't just discouraged, it's seen as failure. Asking for help might make them look unprofessional or not ready, so they smile, they pose, they pretend everything is fine. Meanwhile, companies work overtime to maintain a clean, cheerful public image, and anything that doesn't fit that mood is quietly tucked away. Fans often unintentionally add pressure too. They expect idols to be endlessly grateful, endlessly available, endlessly happy even when they're falling apart behind the scenes. For young trainees, the mental strain is even heavier. They're still figuring out their identities, and yet they're thrown into an environment built on extreme competition, brutal schedules, and constant criticism from staff, judges, and the public. They may feel lonely, isolated, and disconnected from the normal life they left behind. These issues aren't random incidents or isolated tragedies. They're symptoms of deeper systemic problems woven into the industry's DNA. A massive part of it comes down to competition. The K-pop system is structured around ranking, comparing, and constantly proving your worth. Trainees battle for a tiny number of debut spots, knowing hundreds, sometimes thousands of others want the exact same seat. Survival shows make that pressure public, but behind the scenes, it never stops. Trainees are judged on everything: looks, dance skills, vocals, behavior, personality, likability. One misstep can feel like the end. And then there's the culture. South Korea places huge importance on hierarchy, respect for elders, and absolute dedication to hard work. These values aren't negative on their own, but inside the entertainment system, they can make it incredibly easy for companies to push trainees past healthy boundaries. Many young idols feel obligated to stay silent, obey every rule, avoid expressing discomfort, and put the company's needs above their own well-being. That's simply, quote-unquote, how the system works. Another long-running issue the K-pop industry struggles with is cultural appropriation. When idols borrow elements of other cultures without context or imitate styles deeply tied to identity and history. And one of the most visible recent examples came from Kiss of Life and their quote-unquote old-school hip-hop livestream. On April 2nd, 2025, the group streamed a YouTube broadcast celebrating member Julie's birthday, styled heavily around classic hip-hop aesthetics. What was intended as a fun tribute quickly sparked outrage. During the live stream, the members wore looks strongly connected to black hip-hop culture: cornrows, chunky chains, oversized hats, and exaggerated mannerisms. They even adopted speech patterns that critics said resembled exaggerated, inauthentic forms of AAVE, African American Vernacular English. Many viewers felt the performance crossed into disrespect, turning cultural expression into a costume. And then came the moment that spread even faster online. Belle introducing herself as Lil Taco Bell, a nickname many saw as leaning into Latino stereotypes. Social media reacted instantly. Viewers accused the group of reducing black culture to caricature, with some calling it blackface without the makeup, while others said it felt less like celebrating hip-hop and more like mocking it. Their agency, S2 Entertainment, issued a public apology, saying the intention was to celebrate hip-hop culture, which inspires our music, end quotes, but admitted they, quote-unquote, failed to fully recognize how their concept reinforced harmful stereotypes. They deleted all content from the broadcast. Shortly after, the members posted a handwritten apology acknowledging they had taken the concept too far and promising to learn more. But not everyone accepted the apology. Many wanted genuine understanding, not just damage control, and the fallout was real. Kiss of Life later pulled out of KCON LA 2025, showing just how severe the backlash had become. A huge part of K-pop's power comes from the fantasy it sells. Fans see idols glowing on stage, hitting perfect angles, delivering flawless choreography, and breezing through interviews with that polished, cheerful charm. But behind all of that is an entire industrial machine working overtime to maintain a spotless illusion. Agencies guide almost everything, even the tiniest choices: which emojis go in a caption, how often an idol posts, what tone they use online, can be planned months in advance. Because in K-pop, the image isn't just important. The image is the product, and companies guard it like their lives depend on it. But image control doesn't end at styling and social media. Sometimes it erupts into full-scale PR battles, legal fights, and corporate power struggles. Case in point, the conflict between newjeans, their producer Min Hee-jin, and HYBE. Min Hee-jin, the creative force behind newjeans' concept and visuals, accused HYBE of copying the group when they debuted another girl group, ILIT, under a different sub-label. She argued that ILIT's styling, sound, and overall aesthetic were far too similar, a copy-and-paste job that diluted what newjeans had built culturally. HYBE, through B-Lift Lab, fired back with a defamation lawsuit. They said her accusations were false, damaging, and unfair to a rookie group just trying to debut without controversy. They accused her of twisting facts and stirring unnecessary drama. Min Hee-jin didn't back down. She insisted her comments weren't defamation at all. She said she was standing up against HYBE's unfair audit of her label Ador. In court, she doubled down even further, claiming HYBE wanted ILIT to beat newjeans in sales and popularity, even suggesting there were suspicious bulk album purchases behind the scenes. This wasn't gossip. This was a blueprint of how the industry functions, controlling narratives, shaping public opinion, and fighting for power behind closed doors. And those battles don't just affect executives, they can change the trajectory of entire groups. When pressure inside the industry builds too high, the truth eventually cracks through the surface. In late 2024, newjeans shocked everyone by announcing they were ending their contract with Ador, the very label that launched them. Their statement said they felt quote-unquote betrayed and that trust with the company had completely broken down. Fans were stunned. Newjeans was a global phenomenon. Why would they walk away? But people inside the industry knew what that meant. Something serious had been boiling behind closed doors. Things escalated fast. Ador argued the contract was still legally binding, and by March 2025, a Seoul court agreed. The court blocked newjeans from fully leaving, saying they had to remain under Ador's management until the contract officially expired. This left the members in a strange and stressful limbo. They couldn't leave freely. They couldn't move forward normally, so they announced a hiatus. A chance to recover and figure out what came next. For the public, this was the first time they truly saw how fragile an idol's career can be, even for one of the biggest groups in the world. Meanwhile, Min Hee-jin's ongoing legal battles with HYBE and B-Lift Lab show just how messy things can become when idols or producers challenge the system. Speaking out means risking your career, your reputation, and your future in the industry. And even when serious concerns are raised, the sheer power of large entertainment companies backed by lawyers, PR teams, and deep financial reserves makes it incredibly difficult for young artists to win. Because in K-pop, the story you see is rarely the story that's actually unfolding. Now comes the big question, the one the industry keeps dodging. What actually needs to change so these situations stop happening? The first area is contracts. A huge number of problems in K-pop come directly from agreements that are too strict, too long, or too confusing for young artists to understand. Fairer contracts would mean clearer payment rules, limits on company-imposed debt, and better safeguards so minors aren't locked into deals they can't realistically walk away from. Even something as basic as requiring a lawyer or neutral adult to explain the terms could help trainees make informed choices instead of blindly signing their teenage years away. Next is mental health support. Being an idol is an emotional pressure cooker. Agencies need to offer real, consistent mental health services, regular counseling, proper rest periods, structures that don't punish idols for being human. The culture of quote-unquote push through it might make good TV, but it leads to burnout, panic, and sometimes much worse. Another crucial area is regulation. Governments and labor authorities can and should play a bigger role. Stronger oversight of child labor rules would protect minors from overwork. Clear guidelines around surveillance could prevent companies from monitoring trainees in dorms or private areas without consent. And auditing audition programs could ensure kids aren't pressured into unsafe living situations or unrealistic expectations disguised as opportunities. Agencies themselves need a major mindset shift. Treat trainees like people, not products. The system has to stop rewarding overwork and silence and start valuing boundaries, health, and consent. And then there are fans, a force more powerful than they realize. Fan culture shapes the industry in real time. When fans demand transparency, support idols who speak up, and call out unethical behavior, companies notice. Money moves, reputation shifts. Fan reactions can push labels to rethink choices faster than any internal memo ever could. If all these pieces come together, fair contracts, real mental health care, proper regulation, humane treatment, and fan-driven accountability, the K-pop system could become safer and healthier. Maybe not perfect, but at least a step toward protecting the young people who bring so much joy, talent, and creativity to the world. Every industry has shadows, but in K-pop, those shadows fall on the youngest shoulders. And until the system protects the people it profits from, the dream will always carry a cost most fans never see. The music is global. The problem is too. And the conversation has only just started. For more breakdowns of the stories behind the noise, hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next investigation.